Emotional regulation is the ability to monitor, evaluate, and modify emotional reactions to either achieve your goals or reduce intensity in a situation. Our topic today is your triggers are not their problem. If you don't know me, I am Dr. Jerry Johnson. I am the creator of Common Sense Coparenting, and I want to welcome you to my channel today. Thank you for tuning in for this episode. And if you don't know, I am here to empower parents to navigate the complexities of co-parenting with clarity, compassion, and collaboration, ensuring a nurturing environment that centers on the child's well-being above all else, child or children. Welcome. Our topic today on emotional regulation is a continuance of the last two episodes that I had on my channel. In the last two episodes, I had what I would call an expert. I had Layla Farshian, who talked to me about how she, as a practitioner, helps children and adults actually with emotional regulation in her business. And personally, at home, she has children of her own. So I wanted to make sure to kind of dig into this topic a little bit more. And I'm going to say that I think it's very important to dig into this topic because we see a lot of this around us today. Not like we haven't seen it before, but a lot of people are doing what the young people kind of call crashing out. Okay. And this means that at some point in time, their emotions have taken over. And it's not just young people, it is older people, adults, supposedly, as well. And we all need to learn this because we start learning these types of things, and they're called coping mechanisms, kind of, from the time that we are babies. Even from the time that a baby is left in its crib for its parents to come and pick it up, and it's crying and it wants the parent to pick it up. Regulating itself is what they're learning in many instances. Okay. So when we talk about when I'm talking about your triggers are not their problem, that's basically what I'm saying. They're your triggers. Things that are triggering you emotionally or making you emotionally heightened, that's not another person's problem. That is yours. It's not your co-parent's problem. It's not your boss's problem, not your child's, not your friends, not your partner's, yours. So now before we get a little bit defensive, I'm sure, no, they did this and they did that. I'm not minimizing your pain. I'm not minimizing that things happen that hurt all of us. I'm not. Your triggers are real. They're real. They're rooted in real experiences that you've had, or real hurt or disappointments or betrayals that you've had. But the responsibility for regulating them, that belongs to you. That doesn't belong to anybody else. That belongs to you. We all have to take care of, work through, move through our own things, and we can't keep blame shifting it to somebody else. You decide your vibe. You decide how you react in certain situations. So today we're going to unpack, and I'm going to try to do it in 30 minutes. We're going to see if that actually happens, but we're going to try to unpack what triggers really are, how they kind of show up in co-parenting. And I'm going to do this episode and the next episode, and how we might be able to build some real emotional regulation skills. Now, Layla and I talked about it in the episodes that I talked to her about, and we primarily focused in on breathing and stopping and pausing and things like that. but hopefully I can give you a few more tools for your toolbox by the end of these 2 episodes. Because honestly, grown behavior, adult behavior requires adult accountability. And I know that we see a lot of people who are not taking accountability right now for their behaviors. But if you look at it, their behaviors are very childlike. And even children need accountability. Okay. So let's go ahead and get into it. Let's talk about what is a trigger. Like, really, what is a trigger for people? Because this has been a really common vocabulary type thing going on for a long time, where people say they triggered me or da da da. No, you triggered you, but we'll get into that. So a trigger is not an event. It's not something that happens. It is your internal reaction to the event. Okay. So, sorry, I had to clear my throat. It is your internal reaction to the event. So, and when I say that, I mean this. 2 people can see the same thing going on in front of them. They can experience the same event. For example, something catastrophic. 2 people can experience the same tornado in the same place, or the same earthquake in the same house. And one person crashes out and the other one doesn't. One person spirals and the other one doesn't. And why is that? Okay, think about it. It's because our triggers are connected to our own experiences. Whether we have some trauma, whether we have some ego about things, whether we have some control issues, whether we have identity issues, maybe even unmet like expectations that we have of things. So in co-parenting, let's just say your co-parent is about 10 minutes late to pick up your child. You really had something to do. You needed to be on time, but your co-parent is 10 minutes late. And that may trigger you. That may make you upset. But the trigger may not be about the 10 minutes. It may be about, I feel out of control. It's not in my controls. I can't control this situation or this person. Or I feel if you want to take it to being disrespected because somebody's late. Maybe they didn't text you and say they were running late, or didn't get a chance to call and say they were running late, and you feel disrespected. Maybe at some point, honestly, for a lot of people, maybe they feel abandoned in that moment. Like, I'm the only parent that's doing what I'm supposed to do. Why do I always have to like carry the load? Maybe they feel abandoned. The lateness is the spark, right? That's the spark. But the gasoline that you throw on it, that's inside you. That has nothing to do with them. And I hate to say it, and it is a very uncomfortable truth, that if you explode, if you lash out, you send a text that's not so nice, or you talk to your child about them and withhold communication from them, that's not because they were late. That's because you were dysregulated. You were not regulating your emotions. So dysregulation is not a character flaw or anything like that. People always they don't want to own that. I get dysregulated, and I have to sit back and I have to breathe and I have to take a second. I have to do things that I know work for me because I have to build those skills, right? So it's not a character flaw that you are dysregulated. It is a skill deficit. You haven't practiced that. Practice makes proficient. You have to practice that. But one thing that it is you have to practice that, and it is still your responsibility. So let's be honest. It's easier to say that they shouldn't have done that, or if they would have just called or texted, I would have been fine. Or if, they know that bothers me when they're late and they still don't say anything. Here's the thing, and this is really what we have to get out of. Controlling your emotions, regulating your emotions is not about controlling other people's behaviors. We cannot control other human beings. Human behavior is unpredictable. You can say that you know a person so well after knowing them 30, 40 years. That person dies and you still don't know that person had a family across town. Okay? Come on, come on, come on. Emotional regulation is not about controlling somebody else's behavior so you will be okay. It's about controlling your response to the behavior. See, we confuse boundaries, creating boundaries, with control. So the boundary might be, if you continue to do this, here is how I will respond. The control piece is, you need to stop doing this so I can feel better, so I can feel this way. Do you see the difference? Let me say it again. When you're creating the boundary, you will say, if you continue to do this, this is for your emotional regulation. If you continue to do this, here's how I will respond. So you can let them know, if you continue to be late, I'm just not going to count on you, and I'm going to take, my child where they need to be so that I won't be late. Control is, you need to stop being late so I'm not upset. That's not emotional regulation, because you're trying to control someone else's behavior, and we can't do that. So in co-parenting, especially, this is what I hear. They trigger me, or they know how to push my buttons, or they're just trying to get a reaction out of me. And honestly, maybe they are. because if someone can push your buttons, this goes for children too. I've seen it all the time in classrooms, in schools, in life. Okay, if anybody can push your buttons, they gonna keep pushing that button. But you need to ask yourself, why am I making my buttons so accessible for them to push? Why are your buttons just out there? Just like, push me, like on an elevator. You just letting people control you. Okay? That's that they're controlling you at that point. When they see you crash out or act a fool or fuss and cuss because of something that does not need to be that serious. Okay? Emotional maturity is when you realize people can only trigger what already exists in you. You are the one that controls whether or not somebody is going. I walk around here and I say all the time, people are not going to, no, you will not steal my joy, devil. And I might be calling some people some devils, but in my mind. But when people can only trigger what exists inside of you, that means you hold the power. It's not blaming you, because whatever is inside of you, you can work on it. Do you want to do the work? Is the question. And you have to do this work outside of being with someone else, or worrying about what someone else is doing. So let me get a little bit more specific. You share a child, Some of you may be in this situation. You share a child with somebody you don't like. You used to love this person. Yeah, y'all loved each other long enough to have a baby, but that's another conversation. You share a child with somebody you don't like. Maybe the relationship ended badly. Maybe somebody cheated on somebody. Maybe there was just emotional like harm or abuse or anything like that. All real. All of this can be real. But two things can be true at the same time. And what's real here also is that your child should not have to manage your emotions about the other parent. Let me say that again. Everything that happened and everything that exists with you and your co-parent can exist. It can be real. You don't like them. They don't like you. The relationship didn't go well. Maybe there was betrayal or emotional harm or whatever. All of that can be real. But the bottom line is, because I talk about the child's well-being above other things, the not liking and what happened in the past and all of that, your child should not have to manage your emotions about the other parent. Your child, that's not their business. That's not their business, because children take on that personally. Whether you want them to or not, whether you think they do or not, they do. I've heard it 20 plus years in schools, in classrooms, working with kids. They take on whatever is going on in that house, and they take on whatever is going on with the parents. They take it on personally as they have to solve it, or it's because of them. That could be the furthest from the truth, but that is the way that they receive it. When you come to them with your emotional baggage, that is not for children who are learning how to deal with their emotions, learning coping skills for that. That is not for them to take on your adult mess. I'm gonna call it mess because most of the time it is. If it's not, okay, I understand. But when you sit up and say your dad or your mom always does this, or your dad or your mom never communicates, I guess I'll have to fix everything like I always do, and this, and that. And your child is hearing this, whether they're in their room or not, whether you think they're ignoring you or not because they're on a game or whatever, or they're on the tablet. No, they hear it, and that is not regulation. That's not emotional regulation. That is emotional leakage. Let's put it like that. You're leaking your stuff all over your child. And your child is going to absorb it like a blanket, like a towel, like a paper towel, like anything that absorbs something, they are absorbing. They're taking it in. So let's say, because I know somebody's going to say this, well, I don't say anything. Like, I just go about my business and I'm quiet. So let's talk about the silent version of this thing. Because I'm talking about the verbal, like the outward, like you putting that energy into the environment. So let's talk about the silent version of this. So you get a text, your heart rate just goes up. Got your blood pressure going up. For some of us, our face turns red, our ears turn red. I know my ears turn red. For some of us, we get that look on our face. That's that nonverbal communication I talked about in one of my episodes. You reread that text about 5 times, 5, 6, 7 times. You assume the tone in your brain. like they gotta be, disrespecting me or whatever. You create a narrative in your head. Please remember that our thoughts become our feelings become our actions. You fire off, you own a text, a defensive reply. You didn't regulate. You reacted. And that's what I do not want you to do. I want you to regulate before reacting. We see it every day, all the way up to the highest people who, we see it every day. That is not regulation. Reacting is not regulation. Regulation, let me tell you what regulation sounds like, maybe looks like too. Regulation sounds like you're talking to yourself and you're like, I'm not going to respond right now. I need to step away for a moment, put the phone down, or look at something else on my phone. Maybe I need some clarity before I assume what they intended, right? I always say with staff, presume positive intent. But get your clarity. Like, was this positive intent? You might also say to yourself, okay, I'm not responding that way because that's not what we do. Like, you can say something to steer the conversation in another way, even if it is bad intent. You can respond in such a way that it will hold down all that. Okay. Regulation is pausing the story in your brain, okay, that you are writing. Because most triggers that come about are tied to what we interpret, fiction, not fact. Okay? It's what we interpret. And I say it's fiction because we've made it up in our minds without even getting clarity on, is this really what you're saying? Like, I'm receiving it as this. This is the way I would say something. I'm receiving it as this. Is that what you're intending right now? I just want to be sure before I respond. You can use that if you want to. You can use that. I don't care. I am receiving what you just said as this. And you write out how you're receiving it. Is that the way you intended to come across? I'm just would like clarity before I respond. There you go. Gotcha. Right. So let's talk about what you interpret, the story that you may give yourself, in what the fact may be. So the fact is that they rescheduled something. And it made your schedule go crazy, right? This is true. This is what happened. The story that you may have in your head is that they don't respect you because they rescheduled. Where did that story come from? I can't even see if it's multiple times. Have you addressed it? Have you asked for clarity? Have you let them know how you feel have you set a boundary? Okay. Another one. They disagree with you on something. That's a fact. This is true. This is what happened. They disagreed with you on something. You say to yourself, well, they think I'm stupid. No, that is not it. That's not emotional regulation. You send a text or you have a phone call and they don't reply to you quickly. This could go for anybody, not just your co-parent. This could go in dating situations, jobs, whatever. So the story you have in your head, and I'm laughing at this because it's been me. I have done this. They didn't reply quickly. The story in my head is they're ignoring me to provoke me. And I'm going to tell y'all what, when you separate the facts from the story, you actually reduce your emotional escalation by at least 50%. Like you are cutting chances of you crashing out by 50% when you just sit and you separate the facts from the story in your head. Because there are days that I have to tell myself, oh no, you're not taking my mind that way. Yes, they could be ignoring you to provoke you. Honestly, they could just be ignoring you. But do we know that that's the case? No, we don't. So what is the point in crashing out? There is none. What is the point in I'm going to tell him about himself? I'm going to tell her about her. There's no point in that. What is that going to get you? What positive outcome does that have for your child? What positive outcome does that have for you in your co-parenting relationship? I'm going to tell y'all right now, I did the 2 episodes with my ex-husband. We have not always had the best, and we talked about some things, the best relationship. But I know looking back on that, which I'm grateful that I did handle certain things the way that I did it. At the time, I felt like, why am I always the one that's got to acquiesce in certain situations or make concessions in certain situations and things like that? I am so glad that even though I felt that way, I did not project that. I did not act in a certain way where I'm crashing out all the time emotionally because I didn't feel necessarily appreciated. Because now that my daughter is a young adult, just going through high school and college, I saw more of the appreciation started coming out and things like that. Like, our relationship is so much better now because of the work that I did over a decade of her life. It is not always easy, but it is worth it. And here's the hard pill to swallow. And it was very hard for me. Sometimes they are inconsiderate. Sometimes they are freaking frustrating. Sometimes they are immature. And you still don't get, you still should not get dysregulated because of it. Because you know what? Sometimes we're that way too. You're that way too. What is it going to do for you if your co-parent is crashing out on you all the time? Your child and your children needs and deserves at least one regulated adult in the room. Be that adult, please. Be that adult. They need that. They didn't ask to be here. They need at least one regulated adult in the room. And that's all I kept saying to myself. She needs at least one consistent parent that is going to do what they need to do when they need to do it, sacrifice certain things and everything. Y'all, I'm telling you right now, I would probably have more money. I would probably travel more, all that type of stuff if I just was not consistent. They just did what I wanted to do. Because My co-parent at the time might not have been able to be consistent and or might not have thought that it was important to be consistent. I don't know what it was, but all I know is that we both had to grow in a lot of areas while we were raising our daughter. Then you got to give yourself and that person some grace. Be that adult. And this isn't just about co-parenting. It's professional too. I just did a session for a women's conference about co-parenting and career success. I mean, so let's look at it at work. It's the same way. If somebody questions your idea, are you just going to feel attacked or are you just going to shut down? At work, if somebody gives you some critical feedback, with as educators, we get all the feedback, parents, students, other colleagues, district office. Like, if somebody gives you some critical feedback, are you just gonna crash out, say they toxic, say they against you, say everybody's not on your side? Like, are you just gonna feel overlooked or withdraw? Like, you just not gonna do nothing because somebody gave you some critical feedback? That's the same pattern. Emotional regulation is going to have to be your bridge between reaction and response. Real leaders, real people who are like successful, they regulate. I know we don't have good examples of it in our government, in our businesses and things like that. You can find bad examples of anything anywhere. Okay. But if you look at real leaders, they regulate themselves. They do not collapse under the ignorance. They don't explode with the foolishness. They don't personalize everything. And here's where I'm going to stretch you, because the ability to regulate your emotions directly impacts your income. And I talked about this, your leadership capacity and your credibility, not just with your children, but even in your workplace, even with a partner that you may have. People trust regulated energy. Don't nobody want to be around chaotic energy. I have dated people who have had chaotic energy, and I'm like, and I had to tell one person, you're all over the place. Like, your energy is really chaotic for me, and I don't do chaos. I have enough unplanned chaos being an educator, you know, and I have to have organized chaos. I create the organization, I create the processes, I create the procedures so that we don't have bad chaos. We can have organized chaos. But I avoid chaotic energy. I don't want to be around all of that. I don't know about you, but that it doesn't feel safe. So if you cannot regulate your emotions, your whole life is going to be out of whack. If every disagreement that you have becomes a crisis, or every inconvenience that you have becomes like disrespect, anytime somebody critiques you or give you some feedback, you're feeling rejected or defensive, you're going to burn bridges in every area of your life. Every area. Not because you're always wrong, because honestly, you could be right in some of those situations, but because you are reactive. You're not being proactive by learning how to emotionally regulate yourself. We cannot do reactive all the time. Chaotic. Okay. So let me give you a few ways, because I need to be wrapping this up. It's getting long. that you can emotionally regulate. Okay. And I'll go into them in the next, I'll explain them possibly a little bit more in the next episode. So first you need to name it. When you feel yourself getting dysregulated, you need to name it. And you need to say to yourself in your brain, I am triggered. I'm feeling whatever way. It could be disrespected, defensive, you know, you could say dysregulated. But naming the emotion reduces the intensity of it in your brain, neurologically. Okay? So be sure to name it in your brain. I'm feeling this way. Take a deep breath. And then check your story in your brain and ask yourself, what else could this mean? You have to force your brain to generate one or two other explanations for this. Okay, I'm feeling disrespected, but what else could this be? Like you get that text, oh, that was disrespectful, but what else could this be? Could it be that they're stressed? Could it be I'm reading into it, because I'm stressed? Two other explanations in your mind. And then you delay the response. You do not have to respond immediately. Many times an urgency to want to get it out and I need to tell them off, that's an ego urgency. That's an emotional urgency that is an ego urgency. That means you feel like you got to, go in. No, that's your ego. That is not regulating yourself. Then you're going to regulate your body first. That means you can go for a walk. You can sit in silence if you don't mind. You can listen to some calming music, some jazz helps me. Sometimes if you want worship music, that helps me as well. And some deep breathing. So we talked about the breathing piece with Layla in my last 2 episodes, but there's other things that you can do. For some people, taking a cold shower helps. That'll shock your system and regulate your body. Okay? So let's repeat. Name it. Check your story. Delay your response. Regulate your body first. And the last piece, which is usually the hardest for people, is to take ownership. Take ownership. If you are going to ask for clarity or you're going to want to understand more, which you should not tell someone that they triggered you. That's not them. You should say, I was triggered by. And tell them what happened. Then ask for clarity. Was that their intent? That language shift is powerful. You may not like to talk. You may not like to communicate. If you don't want to tell your co-parent or your boss or your partner or your colleague that's fine. You can say it in your mind. You can say, I was triggered by X, Y, and Z. But you are owning it, and that ownership empowers you. It has nothing to do with anybody else. You go through those steps, and I promise you, by the time you get through those steps, you will have calmed down and not focused on what actually triggered you. Okay? So let's summarize real quick. Triggers are invitations to a party that you do not have to accept. Okay? Let me say that again. Triggers are invitation to a party that you do not have to accept. Triggers show you where you still need healing and where you feel unsafe. Okay. And that healing is the growth that you need. But you also feel unsafe in some way. And the growth is going to be uncomfortable. But blaming other people, blame shifting to other people and things, that keeps you stuck where you are. And you're going to keep doing that until you learn how to do differently. So if your peace depends on somebody else changing, you are always going to be unstable. You're always going to be dysregulated. If your peace depends on your own regulation, on you, you become more powerful. You cannot control, we talked about this before, you cannot control a person's tone, you can't control how they act, you can't control the mistakes that they made or how mature they are, but you can control your response. You can control your language. You can control your boundaries, your nervous system, and what your brain is saying. That's your narrative. And that changes everything. So I want you to sit with a question before we leave. Where in my life am I expecting someone else, my co-parent, to manage my emotional triggers? Where in your life are you expecting someone else to manage your emotional triggers? It doesn't have to just be your co-parent. It may be a partner. It may be a boss. It may be your child. Your child definitely cannot manage them. And what would happen if you took control and ownership of your own regulation? It's not about suppressing what it is you're feeling. It's about mastering what you're feeling. Because your thoughts, this is why we need to train our brains, become your feelings, and your feelings become your actions. Your triggers may be very real, and that's okay, but they are yours. And that is not to put a burden on you or anything like that, but it's freedom once you learn how to master them. Okay. So if this episode helped you, please share it with someone who might need a reminder about how to emotionally regulate themselves. And hopefully it stretched you a little bit on your thinking. And let's just remember moving forward that we are regulating first and we are responding or reacting second. Okay. So I will see you guys on the next episode. We definitely are going to continue this conversation and dig in a little deeper. And I'm going to say, as I always do, go out there and co-parent with a purpose. Bye.